doing DeFi, greatest in the world, and they finally about to see why. What you know about XRD? I'm smart money, I ain't never on a decline. What you know about NFTs? It's not just Ace, when you finally gonna realize you need scalability, need more utility, then you better call on these guys. I'm going radical, I'm going Radix, I'm going radical, I'm going Radix. Hyperspeed DeFi, never on a decline, building the future, I feel like a savage.
Hello and welcome. I am Piers Ridyard, CEO of RDX Works, a core developer of the decentralized finance protocol Radix, a public ledger entirely focused on bringing DeFi into the mainstream. This is our podcast, The DeFi Download, a show about decentralized finance and all things crypto, where we dive into the details of the products, assets and services that are powering the DeFi revolution. Today, I'm joined by Friederike Ernst, co-founder of Gnosis and Gnosis Pay. Gnosis is a group of projects aligned around the Gnosis token. Gnosis aims to bring all financial rails on-chain, starting with their massively successful multi-sig wallet, Gnosis Safe, now spun out as safe and securing over $100 billion in crypto funds. And CowSwap, a massively successful DEX that has aggregated a total volume of $45 billion to date, plus many other products besides. Friederike, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's start off. First of all, you're a doctor. I'd love to know what you're a doctor in, and like what your journey pre-crypto was and how you got into crypto.
Absolutely. So I'm not a real doctor. I'm a physicist. So nothing useful here. How did I get into crypto? All physicists can code. So kind of the jump from physics to software is a very short one. I had become enamored with crypto technology probably by 2013, 2014. I had heard about Bitcoin 2012. I initially thought it was a scam. But what really sold me was Ethereum, kind of the programmability of it. At the same time, the internet as we know it kind of went down the drain a little bit in terms of who value accrues to. So currently, if you do anything on the internet, 80% of the value that you create accrues to the same 5 companies. So kind of having something that is decentralized and kind of can serve as a substrate for decentralized ownership and individual agency, this appeared immediately. So I and my 2 co-founders, Martin and Stefan, kind of jumped into that. We initially started building a prediction market platform. Back then, prediction markets were all the rage. We built that. We also built a lot of other foundational infrastructure, much of it because we needed it ourselves. Sure. So, for instance, the Safe we initially created because we needed somewhere to kind of put our own token sale funds. So basically over the years, we've built a lot of infrastructure. About a year and a half ago or 2 years ago or so, it became clear to us that now there actually is enough infrastructure to actually build good applications. But the genuine usage of Web3 applications is more or less zero. I think it's changed a little bit now with Farcaster, but basically everyone who's in the ecosystems, mostly dog fooding, it doesn't really have, doesn't offer anything to kind of the mainstream user, where kind of, I mean, obviously we kind of, as an ecosystem, we have to get to a place where the products we offer are genuinely better than what's already out there, because no one's going to come for the tech, right? I mean, no one needs to know kind of how decentralized this is and so on. This should kind of sublimate into a better user experience in some way, shape or form. And so we asked ourselves, how can we create that? Building on the infrastructure blocks that we had built over the last many years, and obviously many others had also built. And we decided on the payment realm, just because in principle the technology is, I mean, when you get into the nitty-gritty, it's still hard, but in principle the functionality is simple compared with many other things that would also benefit from a decentralization disruption such as social media. And there are clear business models that are proven and work. And we feel we can bring very real value to a large part of the world population. And that's kind of how we got into payments.
So before we get into sort of like Gnosis Pay and what you guys are doing there, which I think is super interesting, I was at DAppCon earlier, sort of, I think it was 2 months ago, or maybe a month ago. Time's weird at the moment. But you know, like you guys are doing some really interesting things in the payment space and really stitching together some really interesting fundamentals that make it possible to do things that people would have thought were like a pipe dream when Ethereum was first founded. I think one of the things that's been most interesting to me, I got started in crypto in 2014, 2015 with Ethereum. I actually had the same experience with Ethereum as you had with Bitcoin. Like I was sent the video, the page for the token sale, for the Ethereum token sale when it first came out. And I'd never heard of crypto. And my friend was like, hey, you should check this out. And I went and watched it. And I was like, that's a scam. Don't put your money into that. That's ridiculous. But fortunately, he forgave me for that. And we started sort of down our route then. I think the really interesting thing about Gnosis that is a true test of entrepreneurship and a true like validation of your ability to be entrepreneurs is your ability to actually pivot and succeed. Like Gnosis and Augur, both huge crowd sales. You guys did very, very well. And then prediction markets just never really took off. No one really wanted to use them. They liked the ideas of them. And I think a lot of the time, futarchy was like really big. And so like this idea that you could use prediction markets basically to run everything. And you could use it as a way of running votes on everything as well, and potentially a way of running government. I think a lot of the ideas that I don't actually discount it, like because I think a lot of the ideas that were early in crypto have proven themselves to actually be true. Like the idea of decentralized autonomous organizations felt like a pipe dream but also incredibly interesting back in 2015 when I was going to the Ethereum meetups and stuff like that. It sort of felt this like weird combination of like delusional ideas, but like actually possible with the technology. But Gnosis, you know, you guys weren't the first multi-sig wallet to come out. Parity was obviously, we all know how that went. Also created a multi-sig wallet. But you guys managed to really focus on the user experience of it. It started from your own needs, but then you extended it out. And then you managed to sort of like be this company that most people knew as multi-sig. Like I use Gnosis. We use Gnosis for lots of stuff on our Ethereum side of things. And it became this de facto. And you could have just sat there and gone, cool, we thought we were just building a small component of a bigger thing. Turns out that small component was a big thing. But then you went, we're not done. So first of all, I think it's been amazing to watch what you guys have done in terms of really strategic thinking through the years and how you've managed to sort of like create that wedge and then move from there. What would you say the main things that you guys do internally are, or like how you think about building products that you would credit with some of that success?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you. That means a lot. It's always nice to be seen, and I know we're often not the loudest and we're not the best at marketing. So kind of like hearing these voices from the community, it always means a lot to us. So I think we've always developed things that we needed first. So this was kind of from Gnosis Safe to CowSwap, which is a decentralized exchange that is MEV resistant that we built. Then we built things like MEV Blocker and Gnosis Guild, which kind of builds DAO tooling. Then Karpathy was spun out of Gnosis as well, which is the prime asset management DAO for DAOs. So basically they manage the treasuries of not only Gnosis and Safe and Cow, but also Lido and Balancer and Aave and so on. So, and I think kind of we actually did a meta pivot here. So I like how you describe things as pivots. And I think this is true. Kind of to a certain extent, we were always having to kind of experiment and kind of just throw things at the wall and see what sticks. As I think you have to do as a founder, right? It's something like 90% of the things we tried didn't work. But kind of if you keep throwing more and more, then kind of things that stick accumulate. So, and I think kind of we went through a meta pivot here, in that kind of we decided for ourselves that we had built enough infrastructure for the ecosystem. And then kind of now the time had come to build applications for people who don't have to know that there's blockchain underneath, that just use them because they're genuinely good applications and they're better at kind of what the current status quo is out there. So that to us was a huge pivot in terms of which products to launch. So this is kind of how we started a wallet called Metri that was launched at DAppCon. So you may have used it. You were there. So basically, what it actually does, it does passkey onboarding. So you know how when you introduce people to the ecosystem, and you go like, okay, now you download MetaMask. Yeah, I know it's a browser extension that looks dodgy, but trust me, it's fine. Okay, now these are your 24 words. You have to write them down, but don't put them anywhere that anyone might ever find them, or everything is gone. But also don't lose them. Make sure you don't lose them. This is not a way to onboard anyone into the ecosystem. This barely works for us. Basically having passkey onboarding, where basically in the background, a lot of heavy cryptography happens that kind of turns your fingerprint into a signer for a safe that we deploy for you, but you don't actually have to know about at all, which allows you to kind of hold stables and in due time also other tokens, which kind of allows you to kind of connect this with Gnosis Pay, which is a Visa card that allows you to spend those funds out of that self-custodial wallet that kind of it gives you access to all of the Web3 ecosystem directly without actually having to off-ramp the funds anywhere. Kind of connection to a project called Monerium that lets you attach an IBAN to your wallet. And in principle, we have all of these components now. We can make something that kind of rivals the user experience of a neobank, right? Kind of you can hold funds, you can receive funds, you can send separate transfers, you can hold different currencies, you can send different currencies. That's already most of what Revolut does. And I think just acknowledging that we are now at a point where this is buildable and usable. I don't want to say by your grandmother, but basically definitely by, no offense to your grandmother, she might be very tech forward. I don't know. But
she was a programmer in NASA, so no, she wasn't.
But basically anyone under the age of say 45, I know, uses a neobank app. So almost no one still with traditional. So basically all of that crowd, they should be happy to use this wallet, and that's kind of the level of usability we were aiming for. And then.
So let me just sort of say something on that. Like, have you ever read a book called the Lean Product Playbook? It's kind of like
I have not.
So the Lean Startup, and then someone came along and went, Lean Startup, it's a little bit long. Let's sort of like put this into a framework, and they created something called the Lean Product Playbook. It's an okay book, but there's one particular graph that always stood out to me, or a picture that always stood out to me, which was like a pyramid, right? And it said, this is the product pyramid. And at the bottom, you have the things that have to be there for the product to be considered a product, right? If you're building a product and it's in a space that there are other products available, that bottom of the pyramid is what has to be there for it to be accepted as a product in that category. The next one the next part of the pyramid above is what are nice to haves. So things that people are like, they kind of expect it. It doesn't have to have it. They kind of expect it. If it didn't have it, they'd kind of be like, but it wouldn't make it not a product, but it's the ones that they expect. And then above the very top of the pyramid is customer delight. Like things that are unexpected that create like a moment of, oh my God, I can't use any other product because no other product has this. And this, I didn't realize I needed it or realize I wanted it. But now I've experienced it. I've got like true customer delight. The thing that stuck with me about this was they said that an MVP, a minimum viable product, is not an area along the bottom. An MVP is the thinnest area of the triangle that you can build all the way to the top of the pyramid. Which means that you have to be giving something that isn't just like expected and required. You have to be giving something that is utterly delightful for it to be a true product that can have product market fit, that can differentiate. Right?
100%.
So now you guys have got the equivalent of a neobank experience. What's the bit of it that changes it from a pound for pound competitor, a side by side competitor, to something that is actually like truly interesting?
Yeah. So for the two of us in the global north, there is not a lot that kind of differentiates it from a somewhat more clunky version of Revolut. But in the grand scheme of things, you have to acknowledge that the two of us are extremely privileged, right? So kind of even just access to a dollarized account. We don't think of this as a product feature in this space, right? Mm-hmm. But it is. Go to parts of the world and people are absolutely delighted to have access to a dollarized account. Being able to hold USDC or USDT on chain, this is very much a value proposition in large parts of the world. And I think kind of we discount that as a product. But what's really lacking is for people to feel they have access to this. And for people to feel they have access to this, you need to have an application that's mobile first, and that regular people with normal phones in those jurisdictions can use. And I would argue that having a very simple wallet that kind of does away with seed phrases and kind of does a bunch of other nice things that kind of you get for free with account abstraction, and that is installable on any phone because it's like progressive web app and doesn't require 200 megabytes of storage on the phone that you have, which is surprisingly often a blocker in the global south. People just run out of storage to kind of to install apps to. Yeah.
Storage is expensive. If you've got a $50 Android phone, it's not going to have much on it.
Exactly. And so basically opening what we already have up for larger parts of the world population, I think this is how we crack the adoption problem. And I think this is also kind of what we've seen in past technological revolutions, that developing countries have often leapfrogged developed countries in adoption of tech-forward protocols. So I'm thinking, for instance, of cell phones, right? So when I was a kid, I had a landline phone. It was embarrassing. You called your friends, basically their parents answered you, said, "Oh, can I speak to Katie, please?" Right. You remember that, right?
100%.
And then Skype came along and kind of...
Or your sister picking up the other line, or your brother picking up the other line whilst you're talking to someone. Just get off the phone!
I know. Yeah, I know. 100%. And then kind of like the curly cords, they only stretch so far. And so it's like, So, and we've never seen the same rollout of landlines in the developing world because kind of the mobile revolution came along, right? So now almost everyone has a cheap, it's a cheap Android phone, but it is a smartphone and they have that in their pocket. So kind of, we never needed to kind of build out the landline infrastructure. And kind of, if you kind of zoom out and take a bird's eye view, I would very much posit that building financial infrastructure on blockchain technology can make it much, much more efficient than it currently is. So kind of, I'm not a payments person natively, so I'm a techie. But when I first looked into the payment stack that kind of serves all of us today, I was flabbergasted. It's technology from the 2010s, built on technology from the 1990s, built on technologies from the 90s. There's COBOL code in there. I'm not kidding. It's like, really, it's like,
Banks run on
basically,
COBOL, like banks run on mainframes. There's large parts of the US financial system that still runs on mainframes. In fact, some banks still maintain teletext machines. I'm not joking. Some banks still maintain teletext machines because if there's an outage, because they had to lay their own teletext cables between the banks, they have a guaranteed line of communication at all times, and that's still part of their disaster recovery plan, is that the use of these teletext machines. And so the amount of legacy infrastructure that has to be maintained. The other thing that massively blew my mind about the payments infrastructure is the amount it's intermediated. Like the number of parties who are
you pay with a credit card. There's 15 different companies through which your payment goes. Right. Yes. So basically there is a lot. It's a very meaty stack. And kind of, this is why it also costs on and off a lot. So kind of like here in Europe, credit card payments are capped at 20 basis points, so 0.2%. But in much of the rest of the world, this is not the case. This was actually one of the nice things that the European Union did for us. But basically, in the States, if you have a regular debit card payment, the average it will cost for the merchant is 1.3%, and it actually goes up to 4%.
Sure,
that's an enormous sliver of kind of the GDP down the drain of kind of financial infrastructure. That's kind of like, and if you were to build it today, there's zero chance you would build it the way that it's built currently.
Sure.
So in my eyes, kind of what the play here needs to be is kind of you build integrations into the current system that integrate blockchain rails and kind of make a tiny bit of it a little bit better for some people. And then by and by, you kind of switch out the underlying rails of the existing financial system. And I think kind of where we have seen this before is in the telecom revolution, right? So kind of when we were kids, Skype came along, you had Skype out, where you could call any landline phone from your computer, and basically it would charge you the local tariff regardless of where you called, which was back then. This was a tremendous value proposition because I remember being a kid. I had an aunt in New York, and we would call her maybe like every other month or so, and everyone would huddle around. So me and my 3 siblings and my parents would huddle around the phone. Kind of, it would be like a 3-minute conversation, like everyone's still alive, everyone's still good, that sort of thing. And then kind of it would cost like 10 German marks or something. So hugely expensive. And so basically the value proposition of being able to call any landline phone for the local tariff, this was a tremendous value proposition. And the way that they did it was that the first 95% of the call were routed via the internet, so it was voice over IP, and then the last mile or so was over the copper cable that was already there. So you plugged into the existing system. You made things a little bit better for everyone until everyone had Skype. And now basically Skype to Skype is the normal kind of other voice over IP protocols. And even if you call a landline phone from a landline phone, if you even still have one, you will be routed via the internet. It's all voice over IP now. So the user experience is very much the same that it was back before kind of Skype entered the arena. So you still have a phone number, you still call people and so on, but the way that it's routed, the way that the technology works in the background is completely different. It's completely different stack. And I think this is kind of where we need to get to, where we're going to get to for financial systems.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with the inevitability of it. And I think this idea of leapfrogging is a really interesting one, as you say, leapfrogging of landline to mobile. There's also a leapfrogging of desktop web-based experiences to app-based mobile experiences, being a leapfrogging moment where sort of China never really developed the desktop-based interfaces. It was all mobile-based. That's why things like WeChat and stuff like that were so successful. And this idea of banking infrastructure being a leapfrogging event where most people are going to have a blockchain wallet as their starting point for digital finance, I think it absolutely is going to be true. The question, I suppose, for you is, why is Gnosis going to be the one that provides that?
So we're an expert in kind of building infrastructure on blockchain. So kind of we've been here a long time. We're kind of like the grandparents of the ecosystem, and in some way we're just we're old. So kind of we have a lot of expertise. We also are one of the maintainers of Gnosis Chain, which is an Ethereum sister protocol that is very decentralized, but at the same time has a reasonable cost. So 100,000 gas are a fraction of a cent, and a very good scaling roadmap, and trustless bridges to Ethereum and the EVM stack. So it's the second most decentralized network after Ethereum. So there's in excess of 200,000 validators on Gnosis Chain. So if you're not up for paying the Ethereum price tag, which you can't pay a coffee if kind of the transaction fee is $1, right? Yeah. And I also see a tremendous problem with the scaling that Ethereum currently offers.
100%.
So in principle, kind of ZK rollups are fantastic, huge fan. But because Ethereum itself isn't ossified, they need to be upgradable. And the way that they're upgradable is from a single multi-sig. So kind of you're entrusting kind of everything that's in that L2, you're entrusting to a single multi-sig. And that is inherently worse than a network that's secured by 200,000 validators. And I think people don't appreciate it.
No.
People, it's kind of, to me, it's to a certain extent, it's almost comic how much of a meme it has become. So kind of L2s are secure because they inherit Ethereum's security assumptions. And this is true, but this is true only if they're not upgradable. And they have to be upgradable because, I mean, we still have really significant protocol updates coming, like Circle trees. Circle trees are going to break L2 architecture. Of course, they have to be upgradable. Otherwise, they won't be around for the future.
Right.
But I think kind of for this, for the moment, kind of if you want credible neutrality, and the credible neutrality that kind of being a financial application requires you to have with kind of the commensurate security, I would be very cautious to kind of deploy on any of the L2s. And then kind of you're either stuck with Ethereum mainnet and you will have to pay the price, or you'll go to Gnosis Chain. And this is why I think a lot of it will happen on Gnosis Chain. I also think there are undeniable network effects. So, I mean, we are all talking about chain abstraction. So bridging between different chains will become much more secure and seamless, and people won't be privy to it anymore. And I totally concur. We're not 100% there yet. So there will be network effects around this. And having the next million people, the next 100 million people on Gnosis Chain, because this is kind of where the things that we currently have as protocols are accessible to regular people, to normies, if you will. I think this is a huge value proposition. And do I know we'll come out on top? Absolutely not. Someone else could come out on top, but we're willing to kind of to enter the arena and kind of fight for it.
For sure, because I think that it's worth fighting for, and I think that everyone who is building in the space is contributing towards bringing about the future that we believe is possible with this. I think that it's one of the big reasons that I got into crypto in the first place was this feeling of not just I want what I'm doing to succeed, but I want what we all believe in to succeed. And there's two factors to it. And I think that it's amazing that you guys are aiming for this. I think so. If I just sort of summarize where you guys are at the moment, you have this product that for Northern European and North American countries looks completely amazing from the point of view of a user experience, from the point of view of financial inclusion, from the point of view of all of the things that can be brought by a neobank-like experience to people in, sort of Uganda or in Thailand or the Philippines. You have you thought deeply about decentralization, about scalability, about the importance of creating a network that can be trustable for these financial transactions. and you guys have, sort of the experience of building in this space over many years and building very, very large protocols. I suppose my next question is distribution. So like you now have this product and this network and this technology, but the like as we both know in crypto, it can be incredibly frustrating to see such bad technology succeed so often because someone has been like brilliant at marketing. Like Justin Sun, I think is the preeminent example of this, right? But so like, what is it that you guys see as the next steps to getting Metri into the hands of those people in the Southern Hemispheres? And, what does that rollout look like?
Yeah. So there are several answers to this question, and kind of it depends on kind of which angle you look from, right? So for once, there will actually be incentives, and they will be incentives that will grow the ecosystem as a whole. So one thing we're currently talking about is giving people who spend with a Gnosis Pay card, giving them cash back in general, because kind of we want to make them a part of the ecosystem, a part of this decentralized network. And I think this is also the beauty of Web3, that you can have this co-ownership in a way. Yeah. The way that we can do that is because we were already in the space and we had prudent treasury management. We currently sit on $1 billion, half of it in GNO and half of it in Ether and stables. So we can actually dole out incentives, very significant incentives in the beginning for sure. And this is, for instance, how a lot of payment protocols have made it, right? So for instance, PayPal gave out so many incentives that it bankrupted them almost several times. This is kind of like how PayPal scaled. So kind of like, so basically acknowledging that there are network effects to this, and that kind of spending on customer acquisition in a reasonable manner. So I think if you look at the customer acquisition cost, kind of talk about kind of like typical marketing terminology here, I think DeFi projects have done a really bad job at this in the past. So kind of if you look at kind of how much, say, Optimism or so have
Are
spent
you saying
on
that DeFi summer and yield farming wasn't highly optimized customer acquisition costs? How dare you?
I wouldn't put it quite. Yeah, absolutely. I would 100% subscribe to that statement. So, but I think kind of like a reasonable customer acquisition cost of, say, €10 or €30 or something. This is sustainable for a very long time. And kind of there, I mean, I'm a physicist, so I'm always like, oh, this should work on fundamentals and so on. But I think, you can absolutely look at any growth handbook and kind of, and it'll be in there, and it'll be in there for a reason, because to a certain extent it is fake it till you make it. And kind of spending on customer acquisition, this is totally fair.
Yeah.
The second thing is making things available that previously weren't available. So, for instance, kind of doing a rollout in Argentina where you have a localization of the app, and kind of you have a local advertising campaign making people aware of of what it enables you to do. I think that's also totally fair. So that to me would also fall into kind of the generalized marketing bucket. You always have to be mindful, and we're good at metrics. So kind of like you have to track what you're doing and what converts and so on. But I think we can do that. The third one, and that's actually to me the most, the one that comes most natively to me is something called circles that we're also developing in-house. So
I was wondering when you were going to mention circles. I was like, circles.
Yeah, that's going to come in here. So often kind of people ask us, well, so why are you building so many different parts, and kind of like, how do they all fit together? Is it just something that takes your fancy and so on? But no, everything will actually fit together. It'll be like a fantastic puzzle piece. So circles is this idea that the way that money is created today is very faulty. So I think kind of almost everyone in kind of the Bitcoin or Bitcoin adjacent space would agree that the way that money creation works is problematic along many axes. So kind of this idea of having this algorithmic money issuance appears, and it appears for a reason. Because I'm not saying that that central banks don't try to act in the best interest of the people. I know that there's a lot of people who say that. I wouldn't say that, but I think it's very difficult to kind of have so much power concentrated in so few people with so little controls. And having an algorithmic issuance of money appears for sure. Would we be better off if we today switched?
Before we maybe it'd be good just to describe what circles is before we dive into. So just
absolutely. Sorry, yeah, I was going to go the very long scenic route. Yeah, Circles is kind of a UBI protocol on blockchain. It's based on a decentralized web of trust, and it combines this algorithmic money issuance that Bitcoin has with a much more equitable distribution. So kind of if we were to switch to Bitcoin today, that would be absolutely wonderful for you and me because we have Bitcoin, but 99% of the world population have no Bitcoin. So kind of the way that inequality would change were we to switch to Bitcoin today, it would make it immeasurably worse to kind of how it is today.
Yeah, the wealth concentration would be absolutely unreal.
Absolutely.
But in many ways, that is the thing. In some ways, that's what drives Bitcoin in the first place, right? Like, you talk to enough Bitcoiners long enough, they're kind of going, well, we have a vested interest in making this a global monetary object, or at least a commodity, because if we are able to do that and get it, central banks using it in their reserves and stuff like that, it makes us fabulously wealthy. Now, the money driver, the capitalist money driver, has proven itself time and time again to be highly effective at creating. Everyone has motivated reasoning, right? Like, some people are aware of it, some people aren't aware of it, but ultimately everyone has motivated reason. There's always the reasons behind actions. And I think a lot of Bitcoin you can look at as being just, there's a bunch of these people who hold various amounts of Bitcoin who have a vested interest in its continuous success. So the idea of, and I'm a big UBI proponent. I think UBI is essential. I don't think it's just important. I think it's essential, especially with things that are happening with AI and stuff like that. And I think that sort of the way in which we create welfare systems in societies is fundamentally broken, partly because of the inefficiencies in how they're administered in the first place. And many charities have now defaulted to the thing, just give them money, rather than being like, try and pay for something, because the effectiveness of just direct monetary payments, that's actually how most charities actually are now measured. Is like, are you better or worse than just giving someone money directly when you take in the all aggregate cost and the output of the value. So I'm not arguing from the point of view of just going, I don't want this to work. I do want this to work. I think my main question around any UBI system or any currency that is algorithmic is, what is the incentive for the people who, what is the way in which you create a groundswell around people? Because I would like to believe that people just go, well, I believe in the idea and I believe that it's good for humanity. But what I think we've seen repeatedly is that the narrative is important. People didn't fall in love with Bitcoin at the start because it was better than money. They fell in love with it because the idea was more interesting or better than money. It was a better form. It was an idea of better money. But what does Circles bring that is going to mean that you can create that community that, for more than just altruistic reasons, are going to push this to success?
Yes, absolutely. So the way that Circles is structured is as a decentralized web of trust. And this sounds very abstract, but what it really means is you specify, say, the 20 people or so you would trust with your money. Okay. Sure. So, and then everyone is not issued the same currency. So everyone issues their own circles. So you would issue Pierce circles, or your wallet would issue Pierce circles for you. And I would issue Friederike circles, 1 an hour for the rest of my lives, for the rest of our lives. And there's also demurrage, so kind of there's some sort of equilibrium. So kind of like, it's not people who joined earlier, they only have a limited benefit because kind of all the money that you have, it also decays over time. So there's 7% demurrage. And then the 20 people you have trust connections with, what that actually means is you're just as happy to hold their circles as you are holding your own. Okay, so I say those are the 20 people I know are people, they have only one account, they're my friends, they're upstanding people, they are not trying to scam this. And I'm just as happy to hold their circles as my own. And then the way that payments happen in the system is, so Piers, this is the first time I met you, so we don't have a trust connection, but we probably have a trust connection somewhere between us. So kind of if I were to send you 10 circles, the protocol, there's a pathfinder that kind of works in the background, and it finds a path between you and me in the social network. And the money travels in a percolative fashion. So kind of say there I trust someone named Anna, and Anna trusts someone named Mark, and Mark is a friend of yours, and you trust Mark. Then what would happen is the protocol would take 10 of my circles and send it to Anna, and it's happy to hold my circles because she's my friend and I'm a cross connection of hers. Then the protocol sends 10 of Anna's circles and sends them to Mark. And Mark's happy to hold Anna's circles because Anna is a trust connection of his. And then the protocol sends you Mark's circles, and you're happy to hold Mark's circles because he's your buddy. And that way, you're only ever exposed to your direct vicinity in the social graph. That incentivizes you to keep that graph clean, to regularly go through your connections and say, oh, I've fallen out with that person, I wouldn't trust them anymore, or kind of add new connections. And that way, kind of you safeguard yourself by kind of looking after your local network. What it actually means on the flip side is that you can't send an unlimited amount of circles, or you can't send as many circles as you have to anyone in the network, because there needs to be a path through which it can flow. So it localizes a global network, and in that way it kind of takes a radically different approach than WorldCoin, which kind of goes the other approach and says, okay, in order to kind of civil protect this and make sure that everyone only has one account, we will scan everyone's retina, and then there will be a separate registry, and kind of we will check everyone's hash against that. And basically that's one way of doing it. And I would argue it's a dangerous way of doing it. I would argue that what it kind of gives you is that everyone can be issued the same currency. Yeah. Here, not everyone is issued the same currency, but kind of this means that local economies can work. And this also means you don't actually have to jumpstart everything at once. It's good enough that it works in local communities, and then the local communities can join over time. And that kind of, in a way, money has the ultimate cold start problem. And kind of by breaking it up into communities where kind of you still have the social component, I think this will make it much easier to kind of drive adoption. And very long-winded way of talking about this, we will use circles to incentivize adoption for Metri and Gnosis Pay, and the other way around. So basically, we will buy back circles of certain groups, and you will be able to use your own circles as a discount mechanism when you pay for real goods and services, because we also make money on the other end, right? Kind of we now sit in the payment stream. So kind of, and to us, it's a little bit of a left pocket, right pocket thing. Kind of, we want this to succeed. We're happy to kind of cross-subsidize some of the more idealistic endeavors to the more operational endeavors where we think, okay, we're developing something that is operationally better than what is already out there. So we have efficiency gains, and we can put these efficiency gains into these more idealistic.
Interesting. So like at worst, you have a sort of like an Amex-like point system with the ability to add on to that a referral system, right? So your
Absolutely.
20 friends are your referral system in your Amex loyalty point system. And at best, you've created a new set of currencies.
Yes.
Sort of like localized money. I mean, super interesting. So
It's a long shot, right? But I mean, I
think it has two layers to it. I think if it doesn't work, it's actually still useful, which is
absolutely,
sort of very
and it has to be that way, right?
Yeah, really interesting. It's been fascinating talking with you, Friederike, and I could talk with you for hours. I think that there's so much more that we didn't cover. But thank you so much for coming on the show. If people, if there's one takeaway you want people to have from this podcast, what would it be? And also, how do people find you and find more about Gnosis?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the one takeaway is let's all build stuff together. So I think this ecosystem is currently, in terms of usage, it is tiny. Let's build for the next billion users. We can now do it. So there's a lot of people who kind of build kind of what I call DeFi 2.0 protocols. So kind of like yield on top of whatever. So, and I think that's not going to be the future. I think giving people financial options and kind of including people who are currently excluded, I think this is kind of where this ecosystem first came from. And I think kind of going back to that is not only is that ideologically, I think, in our best interest, it can also be very lucrative. So I'm very much not for. I think it's totally fine to kind of make money off of all of this, but build for the people, build for everyone. That's kind of my one main message. Where to find us? So we are everywhere that you are. So we are on Twitter, we are on Discord, we have a website. It's Gnosis, so Gnosis. I'm also on Twitter. So yeah, come find us wherever we're at.
Friederike, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Need more utility, then you better call on these guys. I'm going radical, I'm going Radix, I'm going radical, I'm going Radix. Hyperspeed DeFi, never on a decline. Building the future, I feel like a savage.